Today's episode is presented by LodeStar, the fee experts.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's LodeStar's Lending Leaders. Our guest today is Michele Kryczkowski, mortgage utility player, self-described, current free agent, and rising social media influencer. I added that last one in, Michele, because of the number of podcasts and videos that you've been doing recently. So I think it's a well-deserved title right now. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. That made me laugh. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me today.
Yep. My pleasure, or our pleasure, I should say. So you've been in a myriad of industry roles, from operations to even a call center at some point. Currently, you had been very open about being laid off from a position like a lot of people right now. Tell us a little bit about your journey in the industry and, quite frankly, what keeps you coming back in mortgage?
Sure. That's a really good question to kick us off here today. I got started, I think, like a lot of folks, on accident into this industry. They had someone that they knew that they were really close with say, hey, I think you would be great at this thing that I'm doing. We're growing and we need some dynamic folks. And so my story is really no different from that. I started out as a processor in 2002 in a small broker shop. And at that point in time, I always laugh when I think about that, because at that point in time, I didn't even know you needed insurance to get a house. And so
all kinds of insurance.
Yeah. And so I learned a lot. I soaked everything in. I really was very intrigued by the industry as a whole. What really keeps me coming back is just the creativity, right? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of us are very much utility players, and things we've done throughout the course of our career vary. And I love the creativity part of what we get to do every day, and helping people using that creative outlet is just a wonderful shining bright light at the end of that process. Mm-hmm. I think the other part that we're going to talk about today too, that I love, is leading a team. I love leadership. I love growing and developing my own group and watching them just flourish. So that's the other silver lining that, of course, our borrowers don't see, but selfishly, I love it. So
yeah, I can definitely see that, 10 years into LodeStar now, being able to, our head of operations started as a 24-year-old intern doing some marketing for us, right? And now she's managing a team and our one of our most important employees. So it's definitely a really rewarding part about leading any organization. And I know you touched on one of the things we want to talk about is kind of the idea of mentorship and development in the industry. Before we get to how you develop and mentor people, talk a little bit about folks that helped you along the way and kind of what inspires, you to pay it forward, which it seems like you are doing a ton.
Yeah, thank you. So it's funny because when I think about mentorship and finding a mentor, I think probably when a lot of us got started in the early 2000s, there really wasn't that concept of having a mentor, getting a mentor, especially at smaller mortgage shops, right? There's might be 5 people working there. So you're just lucky to cross paths with somebody that might help you and, hone those skills in a little bit. And really, from my very, very first role, I was working with someone who was easily twice my age every day. Just took me under her wing and was very kind and patient, and didn't, she knew that I had the potential to do better things. And so I think as a whole, I think about mentorship like that. I don't think about it as such a formal process. I think about it as more of, a relationship that grows over time professionally, to where, someone is not afraid to tell you things that are awesome and also equally not great sometimes, right? Because that helps you grow. It helps you be aware of yourself and what you need to work on. So I think just as a journey as a whole, it really needs to be organic. If you're talking about true mentorship, I've seen some great structured programs out there that probably work. I've never been in any situation like that, but I've been really fortunate to have just a lot of wonderful people who took a chance on me in one shape or another. And then, like I said, just gave me the really genuine, honest feedback, good, bad, and ugly. So I think, when we think about mentorship as a whole, that's my view on it. I think there's one other important piece that, I really wanted to touch on today, which I just heard recently, which is, don't just think about mentorship as somebody that, you're really close with that can help you grow. You also have to think about mentorship in the way of a sponsor. So what that actually means, right, is there's people behind closed doors making all kinds of decisions without you, without your mentor, right? And are those people advocating for you? Are they, aware of what you bring to the table and really making decisions with you in mind? And so I would even just go one step further to say, mentorship is very important for you to get better day in and day out of what you do, but sponsorship is equally as important, if not more important, to the future self of your future self for your career, and even your path at a company. So just wanted to add that little twist. And I've been fortunate too, as well, to have a lot of great sponsors in my life.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and that's a concept I've heard a little bit here and there, but would love to explore in more detail. So is that mutually exclusive? Can someone be a mentor and a sponsor? And for someone, who may be starting at a larger company, how do you go about, getting that sponsor?
Yeah, so again, I think it is organic for sure. Someone that can be, to answer your question, someone absolutely can be a mentor and a sponsor. But I also think it's about figuring out who is responsible for making those decisions. How do you go about it is you just simply ask, who is responsible for whether it's promotions or, making a lateral move so you can do something new that excites you at an organization when you get there and figure out what those opportunities look like. Who's responsible for making those decisions? And so, and then, really ultimately going to that person and saying, hey, look at what I bring to the table. Like, this is what I want to do. You have to be a self-advocate to some degree, right? To even get a sponsor. Because if that person doesn't know that you're interested, then making friends with them doesn't do much, work in the long run. So you really have to be, step one, self-advocating for yourself and figuring out what you want to do. And then again, really figuring out who is responsible for making those decisions. And sometimes, new things will come up and they'll tell you about it. So that you'll be a good fit. But I think the further you go up the ladder, the less likely that is, right? You have to really seek out what it is you want to do. But yeah, sponsors are just as important. It's all about asking the questions.
Well, and there's kind of a vision component to that, right? Of like, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there, right? So, that was one of the things you just touched on of you need to know what you want and know who to ask for it. I will challenge you a little bit because it seems like through your story and through your history, you didn't necessarily, it's like most people, it's not a clear-cut path, right? So how do you go, keeping your options open, finding those people without necessarily knowing this is the executive position that I want to be in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, for sure. When you're early in your career, I would just certainly encourage people to just try out different things, right? I think that's part of figuring out who you are as a person, what you're best at, and then how you can serve the company in the best fashion that you love. So there's a lot of trial and error for sure. I was in sales at one point in time, and that just gave me a good picture of, what it takes to go out and hunt for your food and then also, kill it and grill it, all that good stuff. And but that gave me a new respect for them. It showed me a different lens. And so I think, really trying to figure out what you want to do is key. Not being afraid to take the leap. There is some fear-based, like we've talked about before, there is some risk, there's some fear there. But as long as you're laying the right foundation and making plans, the fear sometimes can be subdued a little bit by your action and your plan. And so you're not going to sometimes just, tap someone on the shoulder and figure it out, because there is so much trial and error just in life in general. And, to some degree, I think we're all still, there's some still untapped potential that we don't even know is there in ourselves, right? That we're still figuring out. So,
until you have to figure something out or do it, right? You don't know what you're capable of until you kind of get pushed in a way.
That's right, for sure. And that's where the risk factor comes in, right? You push yourself to an uncomfortable spot that may help you grow as an individual, whether it's, professionally or personally.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of helps you determine your next path.
Yeah.
And then, like I said before too, we didn't have a clear sponsor or mentorship program back then, or you may still be at a company that's smaller in size. But you still can absolutely create some opportunities for yourself and growth and sponsorship and mentorship for sure.
And by, sooner or later, then you have people asking you to be their mentor, right? At the end of the day, right? That I feel like there kind of hits this point where it's not mutually exclusive, right? You can be a mentor and then also have a mentor at the same time, right? I feel like
absolutely
very often you should in many ways. And I myself been mentoring, startups, departments at colleges, other folks I know who are starting businesses who are who are pretty new. And I think the thing that I don't know if people get out of it is, one, someone once told me, you don't need to ask someone to be your mentor for them to be a mentor to you.
That's right.
Right. So it doesn't have to be, will you be my mentor? It's not this formal thing. Just ask them questions. And I think the other misconception for me is just how much as a mentor you get out of doing it. So I'd love for you to kind of speak to that, not just like paying it forward, but how does being a mentor make you, a better leader, better at X position that you have at the moment, or better person?
Yeah, I mean, no, you're absolutely right. It shouldn't be this formal, will you be my mentor process. I think that is a total misconception. It's an organic thing, like we've talked about before. And certainly, the best partnerships and the best mentorships are really two-way. It's not just, hey, how can I help you get to this, next level, or what can I help you discover about yourself? I also reverse it and say, well, what can I do better? What can I do for you? Or what am I not doing that you would love for me to do? Or have you had a different boss that did something? It's just really exploring, what that person can provide you as well from a feedback perspective, because that's how you really bond and that's how you really grow. That's how I get things out of it too. Just because once I've gotten that close with somebody, they should be pretty comfortable, with the feedback both ways. So 110% agree, not formal. And just like you said, pick up the phone. There's people absolutely I still call every day and ask questions.
It's important to have that. And I'm sure at a transition period like you have now, it's really important to have, those shoulders to lean on, because you talked a little bit about sponsors inside your company helping you, but you grow that network outside of your company. I think it can have a lot of positive impacts, not just looking for jobs, but beyond that.
Absolutely. And it's funny because I actually just said to my husband a day or two ago, I said, I didn't realize how many sponsors I actually had until I no longer had a job, because people are referring me and, that just means so much. It just really shows, the depth and power that a network has. Just even to the points of, somebody I worked with 10 years ago that we've just kept in touch, just knows me from that long ago and knows no matter what, that I'll have a higher purpose and helps refer me over and just provides me with that. And, to your point, I'm also talking to sponsors about just possible next steps that I'm conceptualizing as well now too, just to make sure my gut checks out and theirs checks out too. And because they would want what's best for you. And I think that's the right way to approach when you're open to work anyways, for sure, the right way to approach it.
And even if you're not, right, just knowing opportunities and knowing things that are available down the road. I had a situation with my wife is in a job she's incredibly happy with. She got approached about something else. I said, if nothing else, it's going to make you realize what you have. Right. And just kind of like, have a newfound appreciation for a role. And I feel that was, in that case, what happened. So I think it's important to do that. And then in talking about the power of networks, is that something that you feel is you do intentionally at this point of like, let me continue to be in touch with the people, talk to people, message people, because it's work, right? At the end of the day to, maintain relationships, albeit being easier now than it's been with the power of technology.
Yeah, it's funny because I think it's always important, and it is a lot of work. But it's fun. Why I say it's funny is because there's some that have just transitioned into friends, so it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah.
And then there's others where I know that maybe in the future we'll work together again. So selfishly, because they've transferred into friends and they're awesome at their role, I'm thinking about them as I'm talking to people about what I'm going to do next. And so. There's somewhat of a little bit of a collaboration going on there to some degree, whether conceptually long-term, short-term. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely intentional about it. But it's intentional in a genuine way. It's not intentional like the first text you'll get from me is, hey, what can you do for me? Because that
You're
just
not cold calling them, right? That's
Yeah, right. No, and I think for the most part, it's all about everybody talking, especially in our industry and especially right now, talking about what's going on. That's why when you and I got on the phone first, or on this video chat right away, that's the first thing I asked is like, how's business going? Because I'm curious. And so it's important for us to stay just really connected to one another, especially in tough times, because we can always help each other. I mean, always. And a network is absolutely your net worth, 110%.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've been seeing more and more. And really the value of a lot of the content we put out is, getting clients is one thing and it happens a bit, but it's really more when you're recruiting or, networking or just building those connections that have a lot of value of, hey, we need to figure this thing out. Jim, do you know anyone who does this? Yeah, I do. Right. And then like you have a conversation with someone to your point, and I always, go in, I'm like, okay, this is going to be 80% catching up, learning what they're up to. But I have one question I want to ask at some point. So it's, you can kind of, do a little bit of both. And to your point too, you reminded me of something. Generally, when you're talking to people, I don't think you really have to spell those things out, right? They kind of know where you're at, what you would be looking for, what you would be interested in, especially if it's someone you talk to a lot. We were coaching one of our marketing reps who's going to be at his first conference exhibiting with the company in a few weeks. And that was one of our pointers of like, people know why you're there. Like, you don't really have to say anything. Like, they know you're standing behind or right in front of a LodeStar banner. Like, they know you tried to sell them a calculator. So like, you don't have to hammer it home. Like, you talk to someone and then they'll give you the information that you are interested in. So I think that's, very much true with those types of conversations as well.
Agreed. And yeah, I mean, it's just, it's, the other thing is it's, once you've been doing something for so long, your network it just grows naturally. It's just not something that it takes a lot of work, but again, it doesn't feel like work, especially as they evolve into friendships. It's just, I've been so fortunate to work with so many lovely people over the course of my career, and even people that are coming in, if they're in town, and even while I'm unemployed, they're like, hey, you want to go grab an appetizer? You want to go like do this? And absolutely, I'm just, you just got to keep your options open and keep working your network.
I mean, if nothing else, it's fun too, right? Of just
right. We catch up and have a good time.
Plug into that. And I know something, in addition to being passionate about mentoring, you've done a lot in your career with specifically women in the industry and building up women in leadership. So I would love, to talk about kind of the marriage of those two in a way of merging together of, how you've seen that change over your time in the industry, and, how you feel about that going forward, especially as it relates to mentoring and development.
Yeah, it's so awesome that you asked that question, because there were a few things that I think I've learned along the way, which is number one, if you're a female and your mentor is male, generally speaking, a man wants to mentor you on your confidence. It's just natural for that to happen. And my advice, 110%, is teach them a P&L if you have the opportunity. Ignore the confidence part. That can come later. If you teach someone how to read a P&L, especially a female leader, it gives them the confidence to drive their decisions. It gives them the confidence to make a very well informed, broad scope decision. And I'll never forget somebody that taught me how to read a P&L, and they just taught me all the facts. They didn't focus on, how I presented or what I spoke about or, my mannerisms or anything like that. And it was very impactful to me, not in that, even in just that moment, but to my career. And that's investing in somebody long-term. And certainly if someone's coming to advice for, how do I present this in this way? I'm very nervous, totally normal. But that's something to me that lasts a moment, and a P&L to me lasts a lifetime. So I wanted to just drop that little nugget, because I think the more we can empower female leaders on understanding how to drive their decisions based on off profit and loss, the more successful we will all be. And it was just a turning point in my career. It's, like I said, it stuck with me. I think it's very important to, one other thing as well, whether you're male, female, whatever, and if you're a leader and you're on calls, especially with us in a virtual world, all of us talk over each other all of the time in meetings specifically. And if you are present and there are people that are talking over a lady, pause the other person and ask that other person who is interrupted to allow her to finish making her point. It just really gives that person the confidence that you believe in them, that they're important and that they're heard. And those are two small things, but they mean a lot. And so I just wanted to point those out today, because to me, those are both very personal and very material in guiding people down in the right path and then growing their career.
And I think very actionable, right? Those are two very easy things for any man who's a mentor to do. And that you reminded me, our director of marketing and sales, Elena, who's a co-host of this podcast, she was talking to another director of sales at a company, a man, and his advice to her is, Elena, you're not confident enough. Right? And I feel like I really like your note of with competency comes confidence. But also I think there's this pressure of, to succeed, you kind of have to succeed in X way, which is hard charging type A male way, right? So do you feel like you've had that pressure over your career? You've been able to subvert that pressure? Is that something that's always in the back of your head, especially when you're mentoring folks?
Well, it's funny because I think everybody leads in a different way. And to your point, there is some, expectation, especially at a certain level, to be a certain way, to be a certain type of aggressor, or to be a certain, and it's, I think we all do it in our own way. I try to really be very respectful. I've been labeled as being too kind. But to me, being kind is definitely not a weakness, because for those of the, you that have been on my teams and stuff, know that certainly it's not a weakness. And so I think, I would just challenge the narrative that you've got to be assertive, aggressive, whatever, to be whatever that X box is, right, that we're talking about. And you can drive points home and be, you can literally have mic drop moments and not even worry about the confidence factor when you have the data to back it up. I just firmly believe that, teaching the ropes of the business, whatever that is that you're doing, brings the confidence, period, because it helps you make an informed decision. Because if I'm making a decision and not understanding the numbers behind it, and then I come to you as my boss and say, oh, I made this decision. And they're like, well, why didn't you think about the numbers, the P&L? Well, then that's right. How can I be confident about that decision? So it's just I think we really have to change that narrative, especially when we're talking to newer managers. They may not learn the P&L right away, but it needs to be a goal for them for sure in their career to learn what that looks like, even if it's on a very small scale, even if it's just, their cost to produce, it really, really helps.
Just the context in many ways of what you're doing and why this is important too. Right, is important. Right. And I think I've come across that same kind of idea in sales, right? There's an idea of what a salesperson is, this used car salesman, and for me, that was never my personality. I want to be a resource. I want you coming with me with problems. And if I'm that resource for you, that's going to have a lot of value, not only that I can create value for you, but for me, because if I'm not the best person to help you, I can connect you with that person. It's a lot of like that networking power. If I know, Jill at X company who can solve your problem, that's going to be a really good, relationship and a referral. So I think that's the way I've approached it. And to your point, everyone just kind of has to bring their personality to it. And the more we get through the period of like, no, it's not type A hard charging personality that works, that's gotten us into a lot of trouble in a lot of situations.
Yeah. And I don't think anyone has ever told me to be more confident. I really genuinely don't think I lack confidence. So I haven't, had that necessary experience in my particular career, but I see it all the time. So I think, allowing people to be themselves, especially, the analyzers in the groups, I mean, they just need a day to think about something. And then sometimes they can come back with the most well thought out, brilliant plan that nobody that was just aggressive and had to, we all had to leave the meeting right away would have come up with. So everyone's got a different style, different approach. We just have to give them the right tools and their tool belt to really execute.
Yeah. And learn about the people you're working with, of what works, what doesn't work. And that's one of my favorite things in building a company is I feel like I can get someone and put them in a different seat and they will be 5% as effective as the person in that seat, right? The person who I have developing code all day and the person out calling and doing sales, if they switch places, nothing would happen. So just seeing those different talents and having the right person in the right seat is really, really cool to see, how people can be different at great at very different things.
Absolutely. It takes a diverse team to make things happen.
Mm-hmm. So last question that we have, this time always goes by fast, like I was saying at the beginning here. At LodeStar is a guiding star, a North Star. So we like asking people, what is your inspiration? What gets you, up in the morning, working out like you had mentioned in one of your other podcasts, and networking, creating content, doing all of these things that you certainly don't have to do. So what is your kind of driving force behind that?
Yeah, so I was raised by a single mother, and then I have 2 daughters of my own. And so really, just being an inspiration to them is super important to me. Showing them, that I get up and work hard and drive towards, what I want to do in life in general, is just really important. And I tell them all the time, you don't have to go to college if you want to do trade school, something like that. I fully support it, but I want you to be the best, whatever you choose to be. So, don't be a half stepper. You absolutely have to go all into something. So, that really is my driving force. They're absolutely my motivation. I was always motivated when I was younger anyways, but I think that's because I was raised by a single mother. So that just gave me the work ethic, the drive, the grit, the determination, just seeing her day in and day out, and then being an inspiration for my 2 girls, because we need more strong-headed girls in our world. So
absolutely. My daughter's only 1, but that's definitely traits I hope to, slowly but surely instill as well. So I think that's a great note to end on. Michele Kryczkowski, thank you so much for coming on. Please find her online. She creates a lot of content. She'll probably be in about 3 more podcasts before and after this one comes out. So thanks so much for coming on the show, Michele.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful.
Thank you for listening to LodeStar's Lending Leaders. Please like, subscribe, and rate us 5 stars anywhere you get your podcast. I'd like to give a special thank you to the LodeStar team involved with the production of this podcast, including Elena Gardner, Tim Austin, and John Gardner.